Hello, everyone. Welcome to our live today. Coach LeAnne here with Coach Elise, and we are so excited to be here with you. Coach Elise and I were just sharing about here it is, it's fall, and we get to work together today.
We do.
And we are part of Leslie's coaching team, and you have joined us here on Leslie's public page. And we are going to be talking today about what does it mean to accept and let go, especially when you don't want to. So, if you could let us know, my friends, that you are here with us, I'm going to go ahead and pull up the comments. Let us know that you're here. Hey, Emily, great to see you. Thank you for letting us know. Go ahead and type into the chat. Type into the chat right now. Why is it important for you to be here today as we talk about acceptance and letting go? What about this topic propelled you to be here? Hey, Vicki and Julie, Mary, we've got Tennessee in the house. So good. I am in Arizona right now. And Elise, where are you?
I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. When you said fall, this is the privilege of being in Atlanta. There's some downsides to being in Atlanta, all the traffic, and it's really quite busy. It's a big metropolitan city, as everyone would know. But I do actually I'm looking out right now in a 7-story window outside, and I'm beginning to see the leaves change and the pace of life just begin to slow down until we get to the holidays just a little bit. That really got a signaling to us in a beautiful way. That there's a change coming. And so I think it's really even appropriate, as you mentioned the word fall, and I thought, acceptance is such a big change sometimes in a place that we can often think about. I mean, I certainly can't accept that. That's not acceptable, or what does it mean if I accept that? I'm going to, all the challenges or the thoughts that go through our mind when we think about change. And acceptance oftentimes is going to mean change. And so just your word fall just triggered like, whether we want to or not, here we come. God is moving us into change. And so when we talk about what will acceptance really mean for some of us, that I think it's going to mean change in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
And we're oftentimes very much avoiding that. We don't want the change. But my hope is that as LeAnne and I talk today, that you will begin to rest really in the thought of acceptance and what that will really mean for you. And, the struggle that you may be in now may be mitigated and or it may be exacerbated by change. But thinking about change, and I know that LeAnne has several thoughts around that I think are really anchoring. And so go ahead, LeAnne, let's kind of proceed with what some of the thoughts that you were sharing with me.
Absolutely. Thanks, Elise. And what an appropriate topic for such a time as this, as we are changing seasons.
Hmm.
They often say, the old wise ones say, change is inevitable,
Right.
suffering is optional. Change is inevitable, suffering is optional. And so then what does it mean to accept change and navigate that? And so I'm looking over here at those of who are chatting in here. Thank you, everyone. It's time for me to accept that I can't change my husband if he doesn't want to change or sees that he isn't doing wrong. I have to move forward. You get to move forward, girlfriend. Our language is so powerful. Thank you for sharing that. Yes,
Mhm.
somebody needs to hear this besides me, besides Chastity, right?
Mhm.
Is you can't change somebody who doesn't want to change. And guess what?
Right.
God is not going to force someone to change who does not want to change. Let's just clear up that myth right here at the get go. Mary is sharing that she's here because she's struggling letting relationships go, letting unhealthy relationships go. Wow, absolutely. She's very empathic and she feels like people that hurt me need help. Oh, there's just so much self awareness that you have about what's going on inside of you, and
Mhm.
that desire that those of us who are compassionate and empathic have
Mhm.
to help others.
Mhm.
Sometimes our help can actually hurt not only us, but the people that we're navigating. And I'd
Mhm.
like to share a letting go phrase. To let go does not mean to stop caring, my friends. It
Mhm.
means I can't do it for someone else. And that's part of that acceptance piece. I can't get healthy for someone else. I can't stop bad behaviors for someone else. I can't do somebody else's work.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a big piece of it. I see that we have emotional. Okay. All right. You're having a really hard time emotionally today. I see you, sister. And
Mm-hmm.
we're going to hold that tender space for you. I want to encourage you, give yourself a really big hug. Feel your body. You are right here and you're safe in this moment. And we're so glad that you're here with us.
Mm-hmm.
Sandra is saying that I don't want to feel guilty about not wanting to be with certain people in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, this is Leslie's public Facebook page, my friends. This is a big topic.
Right.
This is public. So whatever you type into the feed, other people can read.
Right.
So remember that feed, read. Whatever you put in the feed, everybody can read. And
Right.
so we want to hold tender space for you, though. And we want you to feel safe to do that. And so you could say, I have a friend who,
Mm-hmm.
without naming names. All right. So I just want you to be safe, my friends.
Yeah.
And so when you think of that and these scary spaces, these choices that we have to make, what will it mean for you if you do let go? What will it mean for you? So, Elise, as we were talking and as we're looking at this feed
Mm-hmm.
of, these amazing folks that are joining us today, to let go is not to cut ourselves off.
Right.
It's the realization that we can't control another human. We've seen that right here in this space, which
Mm-hmm.
is huge. And so when you think of, I can't control another human being, what thoughts do you have for our ladies about that?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the number one thing as we really talk about this acceptance piece is really that's the place where we have to begin to accept. And we just don't want to do that. Like it's really hard for me to accept that you're going to want to do this behavior or participate in this thinking or in this belief system or harm me or right that's really who you are. And the more that we can really step into the acceptance of, I have my own beliefs and my own thoughts. I'm an autonomous person, my own values. When we can extend that to another person, primarily our spouse, right? There's a lot of freedom that will happen when we move into that acceptance place. Now, I think what we want to do is we want to accept it and like it. And
Thank
that's
you.
the challenge. That's a challenge. I want to be able to accept it and be happy about it. I want to be able to accept it and everything's okay. I want to be able to accept it and all is well. That's what's keeping you from accepting it is because the truth and reality is that if you have to accept it or you step into acceptance, that you're likely not going to like it. That is going to mean something for you. That's going to mean some element of change or discomfort. Like what do how do I accept that my husband really doesn't want to work a lot, or how do I accept that my husband's really very verbally abusive when he's angry? Now it doesn't mean that we agree with it, and so let's parse that difference apart just a little bit. That acceptance doesn't mean agreement. We're just saying, actually, I believe that's who you want to be. That's what acceptance means, that I'm actually going to begin to believe that's who you want to be. In spite of, my confusion or my disbelief that's who you want to be. It's this shift that says, wow, you have given me enough information in our relationship to let me know that's actually who you want to be. In spite of me speaking up, in spite of you saying you're changing, you always go back to this person. And to let go maybe that I'm going to stop trying to make it into something different and let you be who you want to be. Now, that may mean I can't be in that close a relationship with you. That I've been living in this fantasy or this hopium. We talk about that in Conquer a lot, this hopium that, tomorrow you will change. If you only got in front of somebody else, if you only heard this counselor, if we only did this, if, right, then it would all be different. That we're really going to kind of get off that lily pad jumping of hoping and move into acceptance. This is who you are. And I don't like it. What does that mean for me? How will I learn to live with that reality? It's just easier, ladies, to live in somewhat of a fantasy and somewhat of hope. versus actual truth and acceptance. It's a challenge, and we know that. But what will it mean, as we kind of begin to parse all this out? And again, let me remind you, you're on a public page, so we may not really want to like lay that all out. Be very careful, but I want you all to really be thinking about that. Maybe I'm avoiding what it really means that I'm going to have to do, right? And so, I think that that's a challenge. And LeAnne, you can kind of, hop on with that. But we know that that's the roadblock. That's the resistance. That's where we get right up to that place and we go, ugh, because our body can tell us, everything around us informs us. If I actually say that is who you are, that's going to mean something different for me.
Mm-hmm. I really appreciate many things that you shared, Elise, but one thing that really stood out for me is acceptance does not mean we agree with it or we're happy about it. That's not what it's about. And so I really appreciate you bringing that up. That was kind of one of those mic drop moments to remember that whole piece.
Mm-hmm.
And it also doesn't mean that we're denying the reality of what's going on. That is also not what acceptance is.
Right.
And so, as I'm looking at the feed, I see, acceptance is part of grief. I've seen all of your thoughts. Ladies, you are so sharp. We so appreciate the community that we're building here on this page and in our ministry. And, we have, I'm sure some of you are aware, and many of you maybe were at the webinar that Leslie gave last week, right? And we talked about this opportunity right here, about our membership group that we have where our coaches are involved. And we talk about this kind of thing all day long, right here in Conquer. And so if you have questions and you are wondering about our membership community and how can you continue in conversations like we're having right now, every day, there is opportunities for you to do that in our Conquer group.
There is.
And so, we have a Conquer group of thousands of women who are navigating destructive relationships and who are struggling with letting go and accepting the truth and the reality of the life that they are living. And, we want to invite you. If this sounds like it would be encouraging for you, please click that link to find out more information. There is a video from Leslie and a lot of great information about the benefits of our Conquer community. So I wanted to make sure that we let everybody know about that because it is coming. It's not going to be open for forever. We only open twice per year.
Right.
So go to leslievernick.com if you're just listening /Conquer sign up. And you can find out more about our community in Conquer. So anyway, here we go. Yeah. What does it mean to accept and let go, especially when you don't want to? Maybe you're just jumping on with us. And this is a captivating topic for you.
Right. Linda says, I want to accept it and not grieve the loss. And Linda, I would probably suggest that that's probably what you're trying to avoid is the loss. And so, to accept it, it may mean that you have to grieve what you're not going to get or what you had hoped for in this relationship. The dream that you had, the hope that you had, the vision that you had created. And now, over the years, you're realizing that you've been fighting for that all along. Like if this would only happen, or if, or we're just always doing that. In James 4, it tells us what causes quarrels and fights among you. It's the desires of your heart. And so our desires are not bad things, right? That they are ours to examine. They can be bad things, but oftentimes if, the desire not to feel pain and suffering, right? It's not necessarily a bad thing unless it keeps you from walking in truth and reality. Right?
It does, Elise. And, sometimes letting go is super hard. Letting go is super hard. Why do we have so much trouble letting go? Why do we hold on to situations, to people? Sometimes it fulfills our need for certainty. Certainty is one of the 6 human needs. And so we can feel uneasy letting go and moving on. Whether that's a relationship or even a conversation, that could be keeping us tripped up.
Boy, is that true. I mean, we've had, conversations, and I've ruminated over them way longer than I would like to admit, and wasted time and energy with really something I have no ability to change or make a difference, instead of saying, "Hey, what does it mean for me to really kind of step into that conversation and accept that that's someone's difference, that that's who they are and what they think." Right. I've been separated from my husband for 8 months, and some days I accept the situation better than other days. It's been a journey. Thanks, Emily, for pointing that out. And it is a journey. I don't think this is acceptance. I mean, some people have, like a light bulb aha moment where, like, well, no wonder, I'm going to really press into that. But Emily, I think that you're probably on the path, of more of us than not, that some days you believe it and you accept it and you press into it and you begin to really embrace what it's going to mean to accept that. And other days it's just intolerable. Like, I don't want to do this. Right. And so give yourself some grace around that. But I think you have some awareness that says, I've got to step into the acceptance. And what is that going to continue to mean? And sometimes maybe as we accept it, more gets revealed. Like, maybe this is harder than I thought it was going to be. It's not just a one and done, right? For many of you, it could be that finances are going to be really, really different if I really accept this, right? That, that childcare is going to be different, or spending time with my children is going to be different, right? Or I really didn't, as Leslie would say, I didn't get all 52 cards. Matter of fact, I got way less than that. And this is a disappointment, but, there is an upside to that not everyone that we're going to have differences with, we're going to, there's some people that are just simply so destructive. We need to have great distance from them. But I want you all to kind of step in some level of evaluation around that, right? That does this difference, or what it seems unacceptable, does it have to part us? And if it does, how far? Maybe it's just, I can't share a bedroom with you anymore. Or maybe I have to be very careful that the children can't be around you for long. You drink too much or something, that I'm going to really step into, instead of always fighting for your sobriety. If you're not fighting for it, I can't fight for it any longer. It means I'm going to have to, moderate some things in my home. Right. So what does acceptance mean? Maybe it's here, maybe it's here, here, here. It may mean separation, it may mean divorce. So don't think, in a sense, worst case, say, this is another, human being on the other side of me. And so oftentimes they do have things that are redeeming and good qualities about them. And if I'm going to stay, how might I focus on those? How might I accept the very hard things and also accept the beautiful things about this person? So go ahead, LeAnne.
Yeah, well, we all have beauty and we all have brokenness.
And beast.
I mean, that is just the reality. It's a both and kind of
Right.
life, both and human experience. And
Yeah.
realizing, I love, I keep coming back to this thought that I have a me. So, like even with Elise and I on this live together, we are in two parts of the country. I'm out west, she's out east.
Right.
She's in her space, I'm in my space. I have a me. Elise has a her. She's got a me.
Right.
And then together we have a we. But yet we're two separate people, and I can accept what she, right? And I can let go of things that I thought I needed to say, and she can too, because we're having a shared experience. And it's a mutual relationship that we have together.
Right.
Not every relationship in our lives is like what we're modeling here. The you, the me, and the we. But remembering that we have three parts in a relationship with another human being like that. Right. There is a you, there is a me, and then we have a we together. Right. Sometimes the acceptance is realizing that you are your own person. Yes. You are your own person, and they are their own man or woman, if or your whatever. That God uniquely created you to be you and them to be them. Whether we grow up and mature in Him is an individual choice that we all get to make. We can't make that for someone else. And letting go and letting God grow up another human being in His time frame. That's something I have struggled with. Just to be really vulnerable here in this space is God's timing. I have this thing around time. I think that God and I should be on the same time frame when it comes to certain things in my life. I don't know if any of you ever struggle with that.
Mhm.
You want things when you want things. You know,
Mhm.
sometimes I want things, I want a microwave answer to my prayers. I want a microwave answer to my challenges. I want results, all of that.
Right.
And God is not dictated by
Mhm.
desire to push a 30-second on my microwave.
Mhm.
It may be a long, slow cooker, slow, mature grow.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so, you know, in our desire for time management or
Mhm.
control, we can speak unkind things. We can
Mhm.
scold. We can argue. We can justify. We can overtalk instead of searching out our innermost being, our
Mhm.
shortcomings, and what is it that I am clinging to so tightly that I want to agree with instead of just accept that that is who it is. You know, we had a storm, we had a big haboob, they call it, blow through Sun City West yesterday, Elise, and
Mhm.
it is this giant dust cloud.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it's like dirt in the air. This, I don't know, it's like a hurricane, but with dust. It was crazy. The destruction that it brought in its path, you know, it knocked trees down, bushes over, and made a mess everywhere. You
Wow.
can't see through that. There was nothing I could do about that. I
Right.
had to accept that I needed to stay in my house so I don't get valley fever by breathing all that in. And this is part of the acceptance and letting go piece,
Mhm.
is being very consciously aware of what it is you're looking at and experiencing, and
Mhm.
then make choices in order to navigate that so you can accept it in a God-centered way instead of being led by fear. What do you think about that, Elise?
Mhm. Yeah, LeAnne, I love that word, and it's something that I my hope is that you all hear us, use all the time is the word choices, right? And so, I mean, as a nation, well, as a world, we stepped into this pandemic, right? And so many of us, I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I fought it for a while. I'm like, I'm not a stay-at-home girl. And that was a real challenge to me. Like, well, what do you mean? Like, I'm tired of walking the neighborhood. I didn't want to wear a mask, and I certainly didn't want to be sick either, right? But we began to see how much resistance there was at the beginning. And then as we really had to say, well, the kids aren't going back to school. What will that mean for me? I have grown children, so I didn't have any little ones at home, and that would have been a whole different challenge. But for many of you, you had to come to a place of acceptance. Like this wasn't going to be just 2 weeks,
That's right.
right? This ended up to be such a long, protracted illness and place that we had to be. And we could have, I think on some level there was some resistance all along, probably for many of us. But in a lot of places, like we just got used to wearing a mask. I mean, I had a choice whether I want to go out and be in public at all or stay home and not wear a mask, right? And so, we don't want to make this political in any way around that, but there was just, I mean, globally, we saw where we had to get some, we, right? We had to step into some places like, I'm going to have to either like accept this or I have choices though. I can still stay home. And many people chose that. Or I can, wear a mask and go out, or I can do this. And so we began to choose. I mean, I can be miserable. I can just let my kids, whatever. But no, I think I'm actually going to have to, now that I'm home, I'm going to have to learn how to work and do kids. I'm going to have to, right? How many people really began to step into acceptance? And the odd thing is that when we began to transition away from it, the panic that occurred again as we were going to start now being out into the world in a different way. I mean, how many people had gotten very comfortable and had adjusted and had accepted to the life that they got conditioned to? I mean, I think we're in a much healthier place now, back to normal. But we did adjust, right? Because of acceptance, allowed us to get into that place and finally get comfortable and not be
Hmm.
in constant fret and turmoil, right? And so, even if you really weren't, embraced in that at all, there was some place of acceptance that all of us had to take it on, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so,
Elise, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, and so, that's what we're talking about today of stepping into that truth and reality. What choices do I have when I step into that? What will that mean?
Yeah. Elise, I really appreciate when you said adjust. Sometimes acceptance is adjusting and it's course correcting, right?
Yeah.
And so we do, when we're navigating difficult, destructive, damaging, and disappointing relationships, we have 5 choices. I'm just going to throw them out there. I often tell this with the coaching clients that I'm working
Right.
with. You have some choices here in the moment when you are faced with something that is having you feel uneasy in some
Go
way.
slow, LeAnne, with this. Go slow. These are good. These are really
Oh,
good. Ladies, if you have any pen and pencil, these are really great choices for you to be thinking about. Go ahead, LeAnne. I didn't mean to interrupt, but they're
that's
good.
okay. At least, yeah, grab a pen. Grab a
Yeah.
pen and make some notes. And yes,
Mhm.
people are asking, will this be recorded? Yes, you can watch it
Mhm.
again and you can share this. Did you know you can share from this page to people who you think might benefit from hearing this information? So here we go. When we are having relationships that are destructive or damaging to us or they're depleting to us, 5 choices we have in the moment. We can remain a victim to it. We can. What does it mean to remain a victim to it? It means accepting a loss of control, powerlessness.
Mhm.
Maybe it's uncontrolled anger, grief, depression.
Mhm.
If it is draining you and depleting you, perhaps you are remaining a victim to it.
Mhm.
So I'm going to pause there just for a minute and I want you to think about that. Did you remember or realize or are you willing to accept the truth that you are making a choice in
Mhm.
order to feel a loss of control?
Mhm.
That might be a newsflash for some of you. I know when I was doing my work around all of these areas, and even still today, when I do my own personal work and self reflecting, I had to take a hard look at myself, Elise, sisters here watching, and
Mhm.
say, yeah, LeAnne, you are. You're choosing to remain a victim. You are turning all of your power away. You are
Yep.
giving it all away to someone else. And you're letting them to decide whether or not you hold on to hope or not.
Mhm.
That was pretty humbling.
Mhm.
That was a pretty humbling space for me to
Mhm.
be. And so, taking a candid look at what is blocking my willingness to change this relationship or to
Mhm.
change my thought around it. What's blocking my
Yeah.
willingness to let
Mhm.
this person go into the mighty hands of God? So
Mhm.
that is a choice that we have. That is
Mhm.
one of our
Mhm.
choices. Another one that
Mhm.
we have, number 2 choice, is we can change it. We can change it.
We
We can
can't
change
change others.
no, but we can
Mhm.
change our relationship
Mhm.
with them by changing us.
Mhm.
We can change it. We can take a proactive stance and action by taking responsibility for ourselves.
Mhm.
Taking responsibility for ourselves. And we dive deep into that in Conquer.
Mhm.
In our membership group, we have hundreds of videos, 2 calls every month that we gather together and talk about things like this. How do I change me? How
Right.
do I allow God to grow me into the healthy woman that He created me to be? Because can we just say it here? If we are in destructive relationships, we're not altogether healthy. We are
Mhm.
not in full health,
Mhm.
right? And so we can get healthier every step of the way.
Mhm.
And so when we think of taking action from our strengths instead of being depleted in our weaknesses. And so that's a part of changing it. The other thing, the number 3 thing that we can do, I'm going to give the number 3 thing, and then we're going to answer a couple of questions.
Okay.
I love that our ladies are asking questions. And so thank you, Julie, for feeding those over. So here is number 3. The number 3 choice we have is to change our perspective of it. What
Right.
does that mean? What does that mean? Maybe
Mhm.
looking at it with a different lens,
Mhm.
asking some assistance and support from a wise other who might see it coming from another way. It also is empathy,
Mhm.
putting our feet in their shoes for a moment
Mhm.
and asking ourselves, what's it like to be them? Or even having the courage to ask
Mhm.
the other person, what's it like to be you right now? And it helps us to change our perspective. And so, anyway, I'm going to pause there for a minute. I hope that that was helpful. I hope that was helpful. If it was, great. You get to take away from these whatever it is you find most beneficial for you. Here's a question. How do I not feel guilty for not wanting to be with my husband? How do I not feel guilty? I hear you and I see you.
Mhm.
And so
Mm.
not wanting to be with your husband if he is a destructive individual makes perfect sense.
Mhm.
And so asking yourself that question, kind of the guilty is kind of a victim mentality. I'm just going to shoot straight with you here. That's hopelessness, that guilty space. So, how do you not feel guilty? Is deciding you don't want to feel guilty, is one way. What do you want to feel instead? And that's a question that I would ask you.
Mhm.
Elise, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I was looking at that question a little bit earlier. For me, I mean, there wasn't really enough information
Right.
for me a little bit, like I don't know why she doesn't want to be with her husband. I don't know if her husband's destructive. I'm kind of assuming he is. I don't know if he's, if he is or he isn't, but what's bringing about the guilt, like listening to her thoughts, what am I telling myself that's actually, creating this guilt feeling. Thoughts and feelings are very, very tightly woven. Sometimes yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
Uh,
they right here.
it's kind of hard to pull them apart sometimes. Sometimes we're really high thinkers. Sometimes we're really high feelers. And sometimes if you're a really high feeler and you keep feeling this feeling, I would ask you to kind of slow down and say, what am I telling myself? What am I telling myself about my husband? Right? About why I don't want to be with him. What are some of my thoughts? Right? What if I examined my thoughts and we're able to say, are those thoughts true? Right? Is that true about my husband? If they are true, kind of what does that mean? Is there another way to look at this situation? Right? And so, my guess is that you're feeling guilty because your thoughts are, incongruency with those feelings, right? You're telling yourself guilty thoughts. And so I want you to examine your thoughts. Are those thoughts true? Right?
Hmm.
Because we can feel guilty in some places where we really aren't guilty at all. So that would be my thought around that. Check
Yeah,
your
and I
check
love
your
that, Elise. And that's, change our perception
Mhm.
of it. That's
Mhm.
that step
There it is.
number 2 that we
Yeah.
just talked about.
Yeah.
These are creative ways for you to take control of your thoughts. Our
Right.
thoughts do. It all starts up here. Our thoughts create our emotions. And out of
Mhm.
our emotions, we take
Mhm.
action. We either respond or react in the moment based on what
Mhm.
we're thinking and feeling. And
Mhm.
this is what we do all day long, isn't it, Elise?
Yeah. Yeah.
We walk with
That's
women.
another good point,
We
though,
help.
LeAnne. It's kind of like I'd almost be able to say, what are your guilty thoughts driving you to do? Right?
Mhm.
Are you guilty? Are you feeling guilty and therefore you don't really speak up like you should be? Are you guilty and you're really pulling back? I don't know, but that's a really good point, LeAnne. Like that's another way you can examine, like, what are my thoughts really? What are my feelings driving me to do? And
Mhm.
so, really kind of looking at that whole the whole piece around it, not just the guilt piece. So,
Absolutely. And this is part of the acceptance. And, the more clear you are of what you are feeling and thinking, the more you're going to be able to let go of what's not serving you and not helping you to build you at the
that's
core of who you are. So I'm going to go on to the next question. It bothers me terribly that my husband put something in the prayer chain that simply isn't true. I realize I am not responsible for what he says or does. Where I get stuck, and yes, you're not. I just want to affirm you on that. Where I get stuck is if I should speak up and say something or leave it alone and let the Lord deal with it. I'm
hmm
going to pause there for a moment. Using discernment, leaning into the Holy Spirit, getting in a community of other women that you could share these kinds of questions with and get some healthy feedback on is a wonderful next step for you. So I want to encourage you to, I'm going to put up the address again because I know some of you are asking for it. You
hmm
want to know, this is where you can find out and be in a community of other women who are navigating just what you are.
hmm
We have a lot of women in our ministry that are linked with men in ministry. You are
hmm
not alone.
right.
And I just want to tenderly hold that space for you. And so knowing when to hold them, knowing when to fold them,
Mhm.
knowing when to walk away, knowing when to run at risk of having a little bit of music here. That is part of discernment, and it's part of acceptance and letting go
Right.
and discernment. And so
Let me speak to that just a second, LeAnne, if I can. I think that's also kind of under, and this is something that gets shared in Conquer, that I think would be helpful as well. It's kind of like, when do I forbear or when do I speak up, right?
that's
And forbearance has a place of that we understand that we're all sinners, right? And that we all have quirks and we all have, different way of thinking. And so we don't speak up at every hiccup. We simply don't. I don't think that would be wise at all. And some things we just do forbear, and I think I don't want to over minimize things, but I don't want to over maximize as well. Like, they're going to be smaller in nature that we forbear, or we understand a handicap and so we're going to forbear, or we understand a way of thinking so we're going to forbear, or we understand a belief system so we're going to forbear. But when we speak up, and I just happen to have print this out, so this is Leslie's material, but when the matter dishonors God is a first place, that when we speak up, that is not okay, right? I'm not going to forbear in this place. I'm not going to just hope for the best in this place. When the matter hurts another person, when we're saying, ouch, I mean, you can't do that, right? I can't stop you from doing that, but I'm going to have to step way back. Like, your behavior is actually very hurtful towards me or hurtful towards another. And sometimes we find out that doesn't matter to them. Well, thank goodness we spoke up. That gave us more information of how and when they responded, right? And when the matter has damaged our relationship, and when someone repeatedly, sins against a relationship, through addiction or abuse or adultery or, the unlawful things, there's a wealth of things in which someone can harm a relationship. And so when a matter is really continuing harming a relationship, we speak up. And so, and there's a phrase in the addiction world called the secrecy stays in this. Wait a minute, now I just messed it up. In the silence, basically. And so basically, when we are always quiet about it, the sickness stays in the secrecy. That's it. And so if there's a sickness, a sinful behavior, which is a sickness, continuing to go on and on and on, and we're, kind of required or forced to, don't tell, don't say anything, don't expose anything, there's no way light can come to that sickness, right? And so we have to ask ourselves, do I forbear in this moment, or do I expose this? Is it time for me to speak up? Because the more I remain quiet, the longer the sickness and the cancer continues to grow. So it very much may be a time, but there is a difference between forbearance and speaking up. Yeah. And so I hope those things were helpful.
That was really helpful, Elise. Thank you for bringing that up. And you just got a taste, ladies, of some of the richness in our Conquer library. So some of you might be wondering, what is Conquer? Conquer is our membership group here at Leslie Vernick & Co. And it is a space where you can come and get education and support for your destructive, difficult, and disappointing relationships. And so we have a community of we have thousands of women in our community who meet together on Facebook, a private Facebook page. We have a membership site with a library full of the forbearance that Elise just talked about. There is everything in there, from videos on boundaries and teachings on just about every topic. There, A to Z. We have a full library for you of Leslie's teachings and videos and handouts. It is a rich community, and it's only $37 a month, and it's only open for a short period of time. So we want to invite you warmly. If these kinds of conversations and this depth of insight is meaningful and helpful for you, we want to warmly invite you to join us in our Conquer membership community. Elise, when you were sharing, there was a quote that I heard from an amazing speaker last week, and it says, "What we are not changing, we are choosing."
There you go.
What we are not changing, we are choosing. And so getting, to that whole space of acceptance and letting go, there is a give and take in that. And we walk with you and help empower you to make those kinds of life-giving choices so that I'm going to tag this on to the next question, so that you can accept the reality of your situation
Mm-hmm.
and then do something about that reality
Mm-hmm.
and not pretend anymore. Is Conquer appropriate now for divorced but still living with the consequences of regrets? Absolutely.
Yeah.
What would be different in your life if you could replace regret with something else,
Mm-hmm.
like restoration?
Mm-hmm.
And so we walk with you in those steps
Mm-hmm.
into a healing path forward.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something we get to do together in community. The connection that we have in the content that is in Conquer is second to none. So just really want to encourage you there. Here's another question, Elise, that we have.
Okay.
I'm free now, but my struggle is feeling as a Christian, divorced, senior aged woman.
Mm-hmm.
Love you. Thank you for being really clear and knowing who you are, right? You've got that. That my story is too awful for most to understand and not judge. I just want to tell you that you're safe here in
Mm-hmm.
our community. We are a loving, kind, generous, and curious community, and something that we hold very in high value here at Leslie Vernick and Co. is confidentiality and safe spaces.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's not a story, a situation that we don't cherish. We all have our pains and we see you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry that you've lost best friends. And you identified in your question that you have conflicting values.
Mm-hmm.
And, I just, values is one of my passions, is helping women live into their virtues and values. And I get to talk about that. We haven't even talked about this, but we're having a Conquer conference as well. Lisa Turkhurst is going to be one of our speakers. Elise is going to be one of our speakers. I am speaking at our conference on values. Actually, we have Coach Diana is going to be speaking, Coach Jen, Coach Susan. We are all going to be bringing it at our Conquer conference. It's a
Mm-hmm.
virtual conference. And that's coming up in November. And if you join Conquer, you get to join us at our conference should you choose to buy a ticket to that as
Mm-hmm.
well. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there as a passion. And find your safe people that you can share with.
Mm-hmm.
And know that your story is sacred to God.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sacred to us here. And I can imagine the fear of being judged can hold you back from connecting with other people in genuine and honest ways, and even connecting with your own heart as you rebuild your life. And we'd love the opportunity to share a conversation with you in Conquer. Elise, what would you add to that?
Yeah, not a lot more, LeAnne. That's really sweet. I think that that's one way, honestly, the devil can just get to us is to shame us and say, hey, our story's too bad. Our stories, like I need to pretty myself up to join this group. And that's not the truth at all, right? Um, we embrace that you've had a hard story. We're sorry that you've had a hard story. We really genuinely are. But there's no one in here. And we have this range of stories. Yours may be one of the hardest stories that we hear, but we want you to know that it's really filled with a range. Everyone has a story that's in Conquer, right? And it's a story of struggle and suffering. And that's why it's a beautiful place to be, that we're not alone in that, right? Whatever the story is. And the beautiful thing is that for the leadership in Conquer, we have a greater story, which is the gospel of Jesus Christ, right? And we know that his arms are open wide to every single story. There's no sin too dark. There's no story too bad that he doesn't embrace. And as Christ followers, that's what LeAnne and I and our team and Leslie have been called into, is to embrace that story. and to stand with you in that story. So my hope is that the gospel will resonate through Leslie Vernick and her team for you to feel very accepted in this group.
Thank you, Elise. That was beautiful. We know the end of the story. God has
We know the end of the story.
the final say all the way around. And that's step 4. So I promised you I would give you the last 2 steps before we sign off today. Step 4 is that acceptance. It's accepting the truth of who God is and all he is going to do. And that ultimately he has the final say and he will see us through. He will see us through. And not judging God for the way that he's going to see us through.
Right.
And that's our work to do. And so when we think of accepting the fullness of the gospel, and if you don't know Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior, and you have questions about that, and you're struggling accepting God and his plan for your life, we would be honored to share a conversation as well. Put that into the feed, send a private message to assistant@leslievernick.com, and we would have somebody reach out to you, right? If that's a question that you have, because this acceptance of the saving power of Jesus Christ for you, that's a big part of why we do the work that we do. And I am a firm believer that I can't do this life. I can't let go or accept anything without Jesus having his firm grip on me and hold my hand. And I will, stand all day long and talk on that. And so part of accepting and letting go is, what is it going to feel like if I accept and let go?
Yeah.
What does it look like? What does it sound like? What does it taste like to really sup with God, to really lean into this and not deny it anymore? And so that is something, that's a choice that we have. And so I just want to warmly extend that invitation to you as well. And then the number 5 step is leave the relationship. Leave the relationship. Either leave the relationship with the emotion and feeling that you have and work on building it different, or it might mean physically leaving the relationship for a time, for a season, for a permanent. We don't know. We're never going to tell you what to do. What we will help you walk into is the place of choice and finding your voice and your core strength so that you can make the most conscious decision that you can in the moment for your well-being, for your relationships, for the well-being of your children, your future, and your faith. Yeah. Goodness, this has been powerful. I'm going to take a peek. I am so grateful, Elise, to be able to share this space with you, and to all of the folks that have chosen to carve out this 50 minutes with us today. It is an honor and a privilege, and we do not take it lightly. The trust and confidence that you have that allowed you to make the choice to be here with us today. We just really hold that space very tender.
Right.
All right. So, our final question here, Elise, is what about being married to a narcissist? We're in counseling with a marriage therapist, such as emotional and a mental roller coaster. Amen. And so, that could be another whole live, and we're going to wrap up for today. I did want you to know we see your question. Yeah. We know your question. I'm going to be talking, I think tomorrow, I'm going to be talking about our husband's anger. I think that's my topic for tomorrow night.
Okay.
And, yeah, right. And so stay tuned. We've got a lot of lives coming up. Maybe might very well address that very topic. I do want to say, however, be careful about the labels that we put on others unless they have been formally diagnosed. I think I'll just say that here in this space. There's so much information out there on the internet. There is. And sometimes in our own trauma, we can be really quick to slap a label. And just like we don't want someone to stick a label on us, we just want you to be very aware of that here in this space as well. So I hope that's okay that I shared that.
For sure. I think what she's saying, though, I've experienced some really hard things right? And sometimes, again, any kind of diagnosis is really just a cluster of symptoms, and we put a name on it, right? And
Exactly.
so I think it's more important that, you say that she's experienced those symptoms from him, and that's really tough,
Exactly.
right? And so we understand that, and uh, marriage counseling is probably going to be pretty challenging. It's not something we always recommend with someone with those level of behaviors. But
Exactly.
again, that's another time and another topic, and we feel for you. Those are really hard, behaviors and personality disorders to live with. So
They
uh,
truly are.
please know that we feel for you very much so, and you are not alone in that at all. So anyway, thank you again, ladies, so much. Thank you, LeAnne. I really appreciate it this time, and we know that stepping into acceptance, it isn't a one and done, right? And so just in my hope is that you will open yourself up to the thought of it, to maybe even be called through the pain of it, and really know that you are held, as LeAnne has said, in this group. We know that acceptance is an enormous step, and we don't take it lightly. We may say it kind of quickly, but we know that it's an incredibly hard step. But we know that also, when we walk in truth and reality, there's a greater amount of freedom, even if the reality is tough. We're not pretending, we're not denying, we're not hiding, anymore. And so acceptance can be a beautiful, beautiful thing. And we hope you will walk into it, or at least consider it. So thank you again, ladies.
Thanks, Elise. And I'm going to close with this
Mhm.
thought on letting go and acceptance. It says, to let go is not to adjust everything to my desires, but to take each day as it comes and cherish myself and my God in it. So, on that note, my
Mhm.
friend, we wish you a beautiful day and we thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, ladies.
Be well.